I love bows in Warframe. I like the look, I like the feel, and I like the fantasy of using something so traditional in a spacey futuristic game. Unfortunately, most bows in Warframe are single target damage, and in today's meta, that's just simply not gonna cut it. Thankfully, we got a couple of AoE bows, and today, my friends, we're checking out one such weapon, the Proboscis Cernos. Hey guys, welcome back. As always, my name is Leyzar, and I got a couple of builds lined up. Something cheap, something affordable, something that a more casual Tenno can approach as a jumping off point. But rest assured, we also got the Endgame Setup with Galvanized mods, Prime mods. We're gonna go the Steel Path, essentially the works. That said though, please bear in mind that my building guides usually take a more new player friendly tone, simply because I want anybody watching to understand how the weapon functions and how it should be built. So, in case you're a vet and you already know most of this stuff, please, bear with me. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump into the Proboscis Cernos. Let's begin by checking out how the weapon handles without any mods equipped, and for that, just a couple of our regular free shots. The Proboscis Cernos, as a core, is a traditional style bow. You got an arrow, you gotta pull it all the way back, release it, and it's got a bit of a travel time and a rather nasty drop off. But that's where the traditional part ends. As you can see, at the point of contact, tendrils will be spawning, dragging in targets to the epicenter. And after about a 1.7 second delay, a giant explosion will occur. How giant? 7 meter radius, and the pull-in radius is actually quite bigger at 9 meters, which is absolutely fantastic if you take into account damage drop-off in Warframe. Now, you might not be familiar with this aspect. Essentially, when it comes to explosive weapons such as the Proboscis Cernos, you don't get 100% of your damage throughout the entirety of the blast radius. You only get 100% at the epicenter. That's it right here. The more you go out to that limit of the 7 meter range, the more damage you lose. And the damage drop off on this one is gonna be 50%. So do bear that one in mind. It's 50% at the edge and 100% at the epicenter, which is why that pull-in mechanic is so vital to the weapon. Now here's an issue. Well, outside of the fact that this is a traditional style bow when it comes to functionality, shooting functionality, so not everybody likes waiting to charge the arrow and letting it go and all whatnot. You also got a travel time. You don't have a whole lot of ammo either. Now to counter this, you can either pick up ammo from the ground as long as you can maintain a steady stream of kills, or what you can also do is drop a ammo restore pad. It's really not that hard to drop one. You can bind it to your mouse if you so desire. I don't know if you can bind it to something on a controller, and you can make plenty of them at a time if you get the right blueprint from your dojo. Another option is to use carrier and its mod, or you can also mod the weapon using something like an arrow mutation or something that I will suggest later on. When it comes to stats, now, mod capacity should be 60 out of 60 if you plugged in a Auto King Catalyst. If it's only 30 out of 30, I suggest you go for this one because it is a pretty powerful weapon, especially if you enjoy the fantasy of the infested tendril-ish bow and all whatnot. My weapon has been formatted a total of 7 times, but you don't need this much. I format this much simply because I want to test all sorts of mod combinations. I would recommend you go for 5 Forma. Unfortunately, it is a Forma heavy weapon. Definitely unlock the empty arcane slot as well. Your best in slot in this case is gonna be primary merciless, since most of your targets are gonna be dying under the effects of procs and not from straight headshots, so deadhead is out of the question. However, if you're gonna be using this one in tandem with your melee weapon, primary dexterity is also a solid option. When it comes to the weapon excellence slot, there are a couple of options. For example, vigilante supplies. Getting back to the point I made earlier, if you're not okay with ammo, I suggest you test without vigilante supplies and instead use terminal velocity. Since terminal velocity increases projectile flight speed, it basically makes the weapon feel a whole lot better than without it. One more thing about those tendrils that you should know. You can notice that the tendrils do 2 damage ticks. 1, 2, and then the big explosion. It's 90 damage by default before any mods whatsoever. It is 56% slash and 43% vital damage. Actually, it's 56.25 and 43.75. So do bear that one in mind, because the weapon has 3 sources of dealing damage. 1, the arrow, making contact with a target, 2, the tendrils, and 3, the big explosion. So plenty of status procs on our targets. Accuracy is not relevant with this one, considering the weapon functionality, considering the fact that it's not a critical weapon. You can even use heavy caliber. The negative accuracy penalty is marginal, and you shouldn't really feel it all that bad in gameplay. The charge rate 0.7 is not fantastic. Honestly, it feels a little bit on the sluggish side, which is why I recommend just a touch of fire rate on the weapon. We got a magazine of 1, of course it is silent, the explosion is not silent, however, and a reload of 0.6. This reload represents the time it takes the Warframe to pull another arrow from the quiver. Riven disposition is only 1 out of 5. It started at 0.5, it's now 0.6 if you want to get technical about it, and I do not recommend you go out of your way to get a Riven for it. You can get a Riven that is worth using on the weapon, but unfortunately you're either gonna have to be super lucky or very rich to buy one, so do bear that one in mind. Let's talk about damage. Critical chance, critical damage is terrible on this one, 77% base with a 1.9x critical multiplier. Critical damage builds, however, are not out of the question. 1.9x is sub-normal, but still good enough to make a critical damage build. You can go for something like Vital Sense or Bladed Rounds or both or even Hammer Shot and then get your critical chance through bonus additive after effects such as Kavat Buff, Lord Harrow or Arcane Avenger. It's not the wisest approach, but it is a way to get that critical chance, critical damage on the weapon. And as you should know by this point, getting as many multipliers on the weapon is very important to the consistency and overall power of the weapon. Moving on, we got a status chance of 43%, and the highest of all the IPS is going to be Slash, which is absolutely fantastic. Second highest is going to be Impact. Now, I have tried this weapon with internal bleeding. Long story short, it's not worth using on the weapon. Now, the damage that you see here, this 279... From my testing, it represents the combination of the arrow hitting the target plus that 90 damage that we were talking about earlier when it comes to the tendrils. The tendrils should have its own section here, but it doesn't, so there you go. The radial attack, the big bada boom explosion, of course, is going to be dealing most of the damage with 1000 by default, fall off 50%, and that delay of 1.7 seconds. The range is huge, 70% with a fall off of 50%, believe it or not. This in combination with the pulling in effect of the tendrils is what makes the Proboscis Cernos such a consistent and strong weapon. Now let's have a look at a standard build. Damage with Serration as well as heavy caliber, multi-shot with split chamber and vigilante armament. You also got vial acceleration on the weapon to increase the usability as well as terminal velocity. These two together on the weapon make it a whole lot more streamlined and easy to use. I recommend you give them a shot. I'm sorry, I had to. Now vial acceleration takes minus 15% damage and you might be curious, is that a big deal? It's not really. Think about Serration not giving 165%, but instead giving 150%, or heavy caliber. It's not 100% like that, but it's best to think about it like that. We got 360-60 mods on the weapon. We're not going to be building critical chance or critical damage since it's obviously not the best of ideas. It can work if we rely on outside buffs or Warframe synergies, and of course companion synergies as well. Malignant Force together with high voltage will be forming corrosive on the weapon, and then we got Thermite rounds, so essentially the weapon has viral, heat, corrosive, slash. It's absolutely insane. Of course, it procs impact and puncture as well. So this would make it an absolutely ideal weapon for something like Galvanized Aptitude. Now I'm gonna say this. Now, Galvanized Aptitude does not function on the weapon. It is an explosive weapon, and Digital Extremes have clearly stated they don't want these status damage mods, or as we like to call them, condition overload range mods, to work on explosive weapons, sadly. So this is what you're looking at if you're looking for a more introductory level build. Let's say you don't have all the prime mods, all the galvanized mods, you want something a bit more laid back, casual, you can look at something like this as a jumping off point. But don't worry about it, it packs quite the punch, as I will demonstrate right now on the Corrupted Heavy Goons level 120. Please notice there is nothing on my Trinity, so nothing that would skew the test results and make the weapon seem more powerful than it actually is. If you add Warframe buffs, it's very easy to make almost anything seem quite strong. These will be the benchmark. Level 120 Corrupted Heavy Goons, a whole lot of EHP, a whole lot of armor, and you're not gonna see these targets not even in sortie free, unless sortie free is something like a survival and you wanna stay a bunch of time there. We're not gonna go for headshots, we're just gonna go for ground shots, I wanna call them, something like that, and kind of move our targets from place to place. Keep in mind that one of the advantages of the Proboscis Cernos is not only the insane damage and all of the procs that you're putting into your target, but your targets are also getting crowd control. They are stunned, they are being dragged around, which means they are not focusing on you. Now that may not be an issue up until, let's say, level, I don't know, 100, 200, something like that. But if you're planning on staying and doing super high level content, I'm talking levels in the thousands, then the damage that your targets deal to you can become a bit of a concern. And by the way, that orange crit was because of Vigilante armaments and its effect. As you can see, the weapon packs one hell of a punch, and it has no problem in taking out scores upon scores of heavy-duty, high-level targets. And again, this is a cheapo setup. Now, how should we amplify this? Let's say you're not a new player coming into Warframe, you have all the mods, you have everything you need. Now, we can go for something like so. You can go for Galvanized Chamber instead of the normal version, since obviously this one is 100% superior, and you can also add a faction mod. Yes, there's no denying that faction mods provide a huge benefit on the right build in the right setup, simply because this is a separate multiplier from the standard damage you would get from Amalgam Serration, Heavy Caliber, or the Standard Serration, which is why Bane mods are powerful. But unfortunately, you're gonna need the Prime version to actually make a difference. You're gonna have to max all of them out, and you gotta swap them in and out from mission to mission. In my book, that is a bit too much to ask from your, well, most Warframe players. Let me know if you're different in the comment section down below, or if you're just like me. Of course, we're gonna be using Primary Merciless this time as well, and we're gonna retest the weapon like so. Keep in mind again, Galvanized Aptitude, unfortunately, does not function on the weapon. Oh, did I forget to mention, if you don't have the corrupted mods, Vile Acceleration, for example, or Heavy Caliber, link in the cards right now for a full and detailed guide on how to get those mods, and not only a whole lot of corrupted mods that you will be needing for your weapons and your Warframe builds as well. Now, this being a Galvanized setup, it means what? It means we're gonna have to get a couple of kills in order to get the buffs from the Arcane as well as the Galvanized Chamber. As you can see, there's a whole lot of damage, and the weapon is already a bit more powerful. You can of my buffs in the upper right hand section of the screen. I got 6 now with 5, and these will drop one by one when the timer reaches 0, unlike the critical chance Galvanized mods. As you can see, the damage is absolutely insane. You got damage, you got crowd control, you got a little bit of flexibility. Ammo sometimes, again, it is a bit of a concern. As you can see, our little Arcane Merciless, Primary Merciless, is helping with that as well, so it's increasing the maximum ammo. And of course, again, you can give up on terminal velocity if you so desire, so you rest assured that you're going to be having plenty of ammo in your missions. That's pretty much it for Simulacrum performance, but what happens if we actually take this one into a Steel Path mission? So let's see how the weapon performs in actual gameplay. Now, these are the corrupted, meaning you got a little bit of Corpus, you got a little bit of Grenier, and you got the Infested as well. Keep in mind that there's a bit of an anti-synergy between this guy, Revenant, and the Proboscis Cernos. If the target will be stunned by your 2 ability Mesmer Skin, notice how it will not be dragged to the epicenter of the explosion, which basically works against the weapon. Essentially, it doesn't double crowd control, so that guy is stunned. There's the tendrils are dealing damage, but as long as he is stunned by my 2 ability, he will not be dragged to the center. And remembering how damage drop-off works in Warframe, what we explained earlier, that is a bit of a issue. So don't take Revenant with the Proboscis Cernos. It's not necessarily the best of ideas. Now, that said, the weapon's performance is absolutely top-notch, 100% Steel Path viable with no problem whatsoever. The damage is insane. You applied crowd control with the weapon at the same time, so basically you keep yourself safe, and there's really a whole lot more you can ask of a weapon of this caliber. As you can see, taking out targets without any issue whatsoever. Here's something I like to do: hit a wall, then drag them to the wall and try to get the headshot multiplier. So try to hit it roughly like that, so the explosion is above your enemy's head. And I do believe, my friends, that is pretty much it for normal Steel Path performance. Absolutely top notch, 100% recommend. And finally, we can rely on Warframe buffs to give the weapon a new level of power. There are many options and many ways to boost the damage of your weapons, but Lord Harrow is a good option considering the weapon doesn't have any critical chance. I can get my critical chance from Harrow, and I can mod the weapon for critical damage. The problem is, considering how the Proboscis Cernos functions, you don't really go for headshots, which make critical weapons and critical builds in general shine. So in this case, we're going to be going with the ever so brute force and lovely Lady Mirage Prime and her outstanding buffs as per usual. Now, corrosive projection against heavily armored targets is definitely a good idea, but it's not mandatory 100%. If your build calls for something like, I don't know, rejuvenation, perhaps growing power, energy siphon, or whatever else, simply go for the aura of your choosing. If the aura is that relevant to you, do not forget about coaction drift. That will increase the effectiveness of your aura and the strength as well. If that's a little bit funky to you, simply search up coaction drift over on the Warframe wiki and you will see the exact effect depending on the aura that you chose. Arcanes, on the other hand, are a whole lot more impactful. Arcane Avenger R5, farm from the third Eidolon down on Cetus. This one on damage gives you a 21% chance for a massive 45% critical chance boost for 12 seconds. Remember when we talked about bonus additive after effects? This is one of them. So you're getting that 45% regardless of the base critical chance of your weapon, which means we should build a little bit of critical damage on thy weapon. What can we give up on? Honestly, you can give up on that extra fire rate, which is, well, you can get it from another arcane, essentially. And we can go for a little bit of critical damage with Vital Sense, 120%. The second arcane, normally, honestly, is the Warframe arcane, or the primary arcane, something like your Energize, for example. In this case, if you want a little bit of fire rate, you can go with Arcane Acceleration. Now, this one is on critical hit, and you're gonna say, dude, we don't really do a whole lot of critical hits. But with Arcane Avenger now, more than enough to keep this one up. This is definitely an option if you want to use both your arcanes as weapon arcanes. You can also go for Arcane Rage, my friend. Now, Arcane Rage, this one on headshot, 50% chance for a massive 180% damage to running weapons for 24 seconds. And the usual +1 Arcane Revive. The thing is, we got plenty of flat damage as it is, so it's no real need at this point. It doesn't mean it won't have an effect. It doesn't mean it's not a good idea. More flat damage, especially when it comes to lower level content, is definitely the way to go because it will decrease your clear time. Therefore, better KPS or kills per second. Now, when it comes to the companions, you have two options. You can either go for the Panzerwolf, which will be getting yourself some nice vital procs, but we already got plenty of vital procs out of the weapon. The Panzerwolf is not 100% needed. Not terrible, but not needed. You can go for a Sentinel. Any Sentinel will do, just make sure that on that little Sentinel's weapon, you have the Vigilante mods, Supplies, Fervor, Offense, and Armaments, giving you that 20% chance to enhance critical hits from primary weapons. Do not use Vigilante Supplies if you already used it on the weapon. And of course, this being carrier, it also solves any ammo issue, so it's honestly a match made in heaven. We're gonna be spawning in level 165 corrupted heavy goons, unpause them so they can hit me and I can get my absolutely glorious buffs. Now, Mirage's Empower ability, you can get this one from the helmet, and her free ability Eclipse for an absolutely sky-high 840% Eclipse. That does not mean 840% damage, it's actually a whole lot more than that because of how Eclipse functions. And finally, the best animation in Warframe, however so lovely, clones. Now obviously, man, it's gonna be death from above. Essentially shoot the center of your enemies, then watch them being blown to kingdom come. Absolutely fantastic. And I didn't have any stacks of galvanized anything on that shot. This is the power you can get out of Mirage Prime plus the Proboscis Cernos. Now of course, my friends, this is one approach to take, and it is the approach I highly recommend because look. Now you see him, now you don't. It's pointless for me to say that the Proboscis Cernos is a powerful weapon. It's a hella powerful weapon, but not only that, it not only provides high damage, it also provides somewhat ease of use and a whole lot of crowd control as well, which can definitely come in useful from time to time. As always, my name is Lazer. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, favorite, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And if you got any sorts of feedback for me, I would love to read it in the comment section down below. Also in the comment section down below, if you guys want to suggest any particular type of content. For example, I would like to see this thing, or the other thing, or one build or another. Hey, would you like to see some Lost Ark raids? I would definitely love to do something like that. You can also find me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. But, until next time, my friends, bye-bye.